What's up guys, Disventure here back with the video. Today's video is what if Disventure Camp Season 1 was in Total Drama Island. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I've got random number to use, and I'll explain that now. So, in the original series, we had 22 campers, and already we run into a potential problem, because unlike Action, where there's only 14 contestants and one person rejoins, there's 22 campers. So I am going to still stick to the quest and this idea, but with a slight twist, was by FF3-I8L. Thank you for your suggestion. I'm getting through all these suggestions. So basically, I have a random number generator. I just looked it up on Google. I thought I'd give it a go. I've never done it like this before. When I did the randomized cast series, I spun the wheel, and I'm gonna stick with that, but because I just think it's easier. I need to get back onto that. But anyway, so 1 is Ezekiel, 2 is Noah, 3 Justin, 4 Katie, 5 Tyler, 6 Cody, 7 Beth, 8 Sadie, 9th Courtney, 10th Harold, 11th Eva, 12th Trent, 13th Bridget, 14th Lindsay, 15th DJ, 16th Izzy, 17th Jeff, 18th Lashana, 19th Duncan, 20th Heather, 21 Owen, and 22 Gwen. Now, we have 7 guys and 7 girls, so we need 11 males and females. So I'm going to do the random generator to have an even amount of people on each gender. However, if you wanted all the characters into one video, I can make this into multiple parts. I just don't know how I'm gonna get, like, there's gonna be a lot of double eliminations, and I feel like if I do it with all of them, I might mess up. But Mr. Coconut's still there, so that's the main thing. The goddess character, Mr. Coconut. So let's begin. So number 8. I'm gonna just basically do this. So this is the cast I got with the random number generator. So Cody, Tyler, Ezekiel, and Trent. Sadie, Katie, and Lashana. And Gwen. So they're kind of the 8 people that were added. But now I've got to do the random number generator to, well, I could spin for it, but I think it's kind of more fun if I just completely randomize this, okay? So they could still be on the same team, but let's begin. So this is the cast I got, and everyone else didn't qualify. So Noah, Justin, Beth, Courtney, Harold, Eva, Bridget, Lindsay, DJ, Izzy, Jeff, Duncan, Heather, and Owen. If you want me to do a part 2 for Action, I can, and there'll be an option for any returns. So we have to begin. So right off the bat, episode 1 and 2 are the same episode. So the team dynamics, we have Jake and Will, Tyler and Ezekiel, we have Trent and Ellie, Ashley and Miriam, Gabby, Katie, and Sadie are on the same team. Dan, Tom, Nick, Alec, Drew, Cody, Fiore, Gret, Lil, Gwen, and Lashana. Jake would basically be with Tom like he was in the original, and they'd get on really well. There's no Lindsay here for Tyler, so I guess Tyler's just being Tyler. Trent plays this guitar, and Gwen and Trent still like each other. But now it's a bit more complicated. They're on different teams. Jake still tries to befriend Miriam, and Will and Ashley still like each other like in canon. And Ellie and Gabby are still really close. Fiore still does her nice girl routine, and Cody obviously still likes Gwen. And we have Lil here who still wants to be a natural good leader. Drew and Cody would just naturally get along very well because I think they're very similar people. And Dan, Cody, and Drew would probably be like the Total Drama Island's now version of Duncan, Jeff, and DJ. Obviously, they wouldn't be bullying people. So in episode 1, there's a team swap, and I'm considering whether or not to do this because Katie and Sadie want to swap teams original, but I thought it would be more interesting to do this, so I decided to do the random number generator to decide which 2 members would swap teams, and kind of making the universe why. So 1 is Jake, and 11 is Katie. So that I'm doing it in the order, and then it's the same for the Killer Bass. 1 is Dan, 11 is Lashana. So the people I got were Gwen and Trent. And this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And so, in my mind, just swapping Gwen and Trent over to a different team makes no sense in the story. So I decided to change it up and say Tom and would swap teams with Trent. The reason for this is Tom and Jake have obviously built an attraction to each other, and Trent and Gwen obviously like each other, and this way it makes more sense. Also, Gwen is friends with Lashana, and so I personally think Trent would swap teams, and so would Tom. In episode 2, not a lot, the jumping challenge, Tyler with Ezekiel, Sadie and Katie would all still jump, with Trent and Gwen still jumping as well as Lashana and Cody. Now we gotta go through everyone else, trying to figure out if they would still jump. Ashley would comfort Will, and he'd be too afraid. Will would be too afraid and refuse to jump. Gabby would absolutely jump with Ellie, and so they would both get a point. Ashley would jump too, and Miriam would jump as we saw in the challenge, with her and Fury. Tom would encourage Jake to jump, and I think he would be afraid, but because of Tom's encouragement, I do believe Jake would be able to jump. Alec would obviously jump as well, with Fury refusing to jump, as she wouldn't want get her hair wet, and also make the excuse, she's a kid on the island, so she wouldn't want to jump. Lil would jump to help her team get the point, and Nick wouldn't jump to get his clothes wet, so that makes sense. Drew, Dan, he would be too... I think Dan probably... I know it's Dan. Gret would jump, but because there's no Miriam to force Fury, there's no reason for her to really jump. I don't think anyone on this team would force her. You could argue Lashana, but first of all, Fury's not outright being Heather, just complaining about that, she's not getting her hair wet. Fury would make a legitimately good reason not to jump. And second of all, I don't think Lashana would do it at this point in time, because it would put a target on her back if she threw Fury in the water. And so, it leaves Drew and Dan to do the jumping. And I think Drew would jump, and obviously Dan would as well. Meaning the Gophers get the point. The advantage in the first round. Because Tom would be very handy, I honestly think the Gophers would win this challenge, as I think they would just do better in general. And overall, because of how well they would work as a team, I do think yeah. Wait, is there even... So, I do honestly think that the Gophers would probably win the challenge. And the Killer Bass go to elimination. Now, at this point, Fury, it convinces Alec, and they're still in an alliance. So Fury and Alec talk about Trent and Cody. These four are kind of a problem. Now, Lil still has a Nick in her alliance, but in this universe, she would probably now add Drew and Dan to the group. And Fury and Alec need to break that up. So, in typical fashion, so the Gophers win the challenge with the Killer Bass obviously losing. Now, Fury and Nick did not jump in this challenge. And so, I think Lil would probably want to get out Fury, because Fury wouldn't be that good for challenges. And I feel like here, Gret, Alec, and Fury would now be in alliance in this universe for being a part of the villains. Fiore would talk to Alec on how they need to vote out Nick, who would obviously didn't jump for the right reasons. Now, I forgot that, actually no, LaShawn would just throw Nick in the water for this challenge. What am I saying? LaShawn would just throw Nick in the water. And this would make Dan and Drew kind of scared. So they would probably jump in the water too. And actually, okay, so I'm just going to go through this again. And now that I'm thinking about this, if Nick was Heather in this situation, I think LaShawn would just do the same thing. She would just throw Nick in the water. Dan and Drew would be petrified, so they would probably just jump in the water anyway, because they wouldn't want to get thrown by LaShawn. And so Fiore wouldn't be because there's nobody obvious she couldn't manipulate not to jump here. She would also jump in the water. Now, at this point, the only people is the Gophers. So it's 5, meaning the Killer Bass would win. Actually, the Killer Bass win here, since Nick got thrown in the water, and with characters like Dan and Alec on the team, there's a lot, and Fiore, there's more smarter people to make a hot tub. And in the original version of the Killer Bass were distracted with other things, with Katie and Sadie still getting stung. So that would probably still happen, but on the Gophers. And I honestly don't think they'd be able to win. Ashley was she could put things together, but I don't think anyone else in the team would be that good here. So, yeah, the Ghost of elimination. Now, a lot of people would say Ezekiel's the first person out here, but I don't think so. Ezekiel wouldn't say his comment here because there are more girls than there are guys. So, in this version, Will would be the first person booted in Toll Drama Island for not jumping in the challenge. Simply because of the fact, first of all, Ashley and Will both have a close connection here. Gabby would be friends with Tom still in this version, and Ellie would probably join Jake and Tom in a little group, even though Ellie wouldn't like Jake very much. Well, they kind of have a friendship in season 1, which I like, but up until Ellie became a villain, but that would probably still happen. Tyler would probably try to look out for Miriam, and honestly Miriam would just give out about him. Katie and Sadie, they did the challenge, and the original vote was Courtney, and Will's not nearly as annoying as Courtney, and because Will's a very anxious person, I do think they'd all vote for Will, meaning Will's eliminated. Ashley would be really sad to see him go, and will wish everyone farewell, as he was glad that he was able to compete in this challenge. In episode 3, this is very different. There's no MP3 player, but obviously Drew's sketchbook would be taken by Fiore, who wouldn't be looking for it for the entire episode, which would be the plot of Drew and Dan. Alec would also witness this, but wouldn't say anything, as he would ask Fiore what this is about. Fiore would explain she overheard an alliance with little Nick and Dan and Drew, who I think now Willow would add in this universe. Because Ashley and Will first of all aren't here, and Dan's a very smart player as well. And Drew is just naturally his friend, and I think Will cares more about friendship than strategy. LaShawn, Gwen, and Trent would obviously be in an alliance as well, and Alec and Fiore would explain that they should get Cody on side because he likes Gwen. And he also seems to be just generally a likable person. LaShawn and Gret probably would get into an argument, as Gret would try to boss her around, but because LaShawn stands up to herself and basically fights back, so Gret doesn't really do anything. Here in this challenge, this is the sleeping challenge, and Katie and Sadie would probably be the first to fall asleep on their team, and Jake and Tom would be able to keep each other awake. Then it would be Nick, Drew, Dan. Lil would be really good. Brett. Fiore would probably be the first on her team. Honestly, she'd probably be one of the first out here. I don't see her doing that well in this challenge. Alec would be pretty good here. I think LaShauna, she falls asleep around this point. Tyler falls asleep. Ashley, she'd fall asleep, and Miriam. Jay, so it's these six. Ellie and Jake could both fall asleep, which leaves Tom, Gabby, and Ezekiel. Lil and Alec, Lil, Cody, and Trent would now fall asleep. Tom would eventually fall asleep as well, which leaves Gwen, Alec, Gabby, and Ezekiel as the final four members of their team. Now, I have one deciding factor, and originally Gwen won this challenge, and Alec falls asleep. Gabby and Ezekiel could probably outrank Gwen. Like, Ezekiel lives on a farm, okay? I know he wasn't in the original episode, but I do think Ezekiel could probably win the challenge. And even if you don't think so, I think Gabby just wins, because Gabby is very an energetic person. I do think Gabby would be really good in this challenge. And so, think because of this, the Gophers actually win the challenge here. So, the Killer Bass. So, this is where Fury would make up a plan to sabotage someone in the Alliance. So what Fury would do with Alec is she would get Alec to look at the people and who would hurt the group the most by being eliminated. And I think it's obvious that it would be probably Dan. Because think about it, Drew and Dan is like best friends. Dan, besides Drew, there's nobody in the group. Lil's a strong leader, sure, but I think at this point in time, Fury realizes they need Lil. Intelligence-wise, they've got Fury and Alec. Her and Alec, they don't really need Dan. Dan's more of a liability. And if Fury's trying to do this strategy, she really needs to eliminate Dan as fast as possible. So Fury sabotages Dan by hiding the notebook in his under his pillow. When the group arrive, Drew finds this. Drew is angry at Dan for what's happened. The Alliance all turn on him, and because of that, Dan is eliminated. Fury smiles, knowing that she's finally succeeded, and Lashana and Gret still butting heads. And Lil is confused about... Lil obviously not happy that Dan stole a notebook from Drew. Fury would go up to Drew and apologize for what happened to his friend, and would encourage him that she could always join them if she wants. Lil is suspicious of, obviously, Fury just approaching them, but she doesn't really think much of it. Gwen and Trent are obviously still together in this episode. They're still, the original. Episode 4 is Dodge Brawl. So, in Dodge Brawl, we have a bit of a difference here. So, Dodge Brawl, we have... Tyler would still probably do what he did in the original. I think he would still probably try to get everyone to pass the balls to me. I can dominate this game. And Tom would be pretty good here. Now, I think the Killer Bass win because Fury and Alec are really smart people. And I think Alec would have read a book somewhere on how to actually win Dodge Brawl. And overall, I just think they would do better in the challenge. Like, Tom and Jake, besides Alec, you've got Tom and Ashley. Tyler's super strong fingers, but yeah, I think honestly in this challenge, the Kill Bass are going to win, so. And unfortunately, Tyler goes home. It's just because of the fact he would be the worst in this challenge. I mean, besides Katie and Sadie, Tyler missed every single ball in this challenge. And so I think Tom, and in this challenge, Jake would take a hit for Miriam, similar to how Cody does with Gwen. But unlike the Cody and Gwen dynamic, this is where they would actually bond. So Jake and Miriam actually bond here. And unfortunately for Tyler, and this sucks for Tyler, I do think he goes home just because of the fact Ellie and Gabby are a couple. They're getting close. Ashley and Ezekiel, I mean, and Ezekiel obviously wouldn't say anything yet, because there's, again, less guys in this version. And I honestly do think he'd probably befriend Ashley here. I can see that Ezekiel and Ashley are. Now, obviously, Ashley and Tyler would be friends, so she wouldn't want to vote him. Katie Sadie would vote Tyler. I think these all would vote for Tyler. Ezekiel would probably vote for Miriam. And then these three probably vote for Miriam because she would probably be the worst in the challenge. But I think Tyler goes home here. So Tyler is eliminated. Tyler's really sad about this, but there's nothing he can do. He just has to go home. Poor Tyler. I think this is the worst I've ever had Tyler in a video. Let me know. Like, is this the worst I've actually had this guy? Has, like, episode 4? That's crazy. I can't imagine Tyler was even this early. Episode 5, we have the talent show. So it's Trent who competes in this challenge. I think Nick competes since he's quite a fashionable person. And I think Fiore would probably compete. Katie and Sadie for the Gophers. And Ezekiel, since he's played a trombone. Although we don't know how good he is in the confessional. So, I think considering we look at the teams again, Katie and Sadie would be good at dancing. Ezekiel seems pretty good. Trent would be good at his guitar. I think Nick would just mess up whatever he did. And Fiore would obviously be annoyed with Lashana and Gwen, because at this point in time, Gwen and Lashana and Trent are the biggest threats in her alliance. At this point, they're the biggest problems, because these two are with Nick, so these three are a group, but these four are together. And while they don't have Cody necessarily, they technically have Cody aligned. I mean, Cody is with Gwen, but he's not really... He wants to get rid of Trent, but Cody will not vote for Gwen. So I feel like Fiore needs to kind of figure out how they're going to break this four group and these three. So they need to approach Gret, who's the only option that she has to work with. And I think the Killer Baths do lose the challenge here. So, with Gret here, Fiore and Alec would obviously approach how they did with Ellie. And for what happened last episode, Fiore would approach Drew and talk to him about, they'd make a deal with Gret and Lashana, who would obviously be really good for challenges at this point, but I feel like Fiore doesn't really need that at this point in time. So, I think in this episode, Fiore convinces Drew, as he feels indebted for Fiore for getting his notebook back. Lil and Nick tries to convince him not to work with Fiore, but he doesn't really listen. So Gwen calls to Cody, and they talk how they need to get rid of somebody else. So Trent, Gwen, and Cody and Lashana obviously want to vote for Gret. These three vote Gret. These four vote Gwen. Actually, no, Gwen's diary. There's no Gwen's diary here, because Fiore wouldn't do that strategy that Heather did. So I think these three would vote. Would they vote? They might vote Nick here. They actually get Drew probably vote Nick. Honestly, I can see Fiore like manipulating Drew into where, Nick was the one to frame Dan, and Drew's like, what? He writes what, and I think this makes him kind of feel guilty for voting out Dan. Then he realizes that makes no sense. I mean, Lil and Nick are very close, and then Fiore talks to Drew and says, if it came down to the final three, who would Lil pick to bring in the finale between Nick and Drew? Because in my head canon, there is some attraction between Nick and Lil. I think obviously the two are meant to be a couple, and I think that's what was the plan. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be reading into things, but that's what I'm going to go with. So Drew obviously would agree, but for now, Fiore obviously says to Alec, we need to kind of keep Lil and Nick on our side, because we will have the numbers to get rid of one of these four members. And so Cody might just be the easiest vote for them to honestly get rid of. But I feel like Fury doesn't really want to get rid of Cody. So these 4 vote for Nick. These 4 vote for Gret. And these 2, who did they vote for? I think they vote for Fury. Nick wouldn't vote for Fury. I feel like these 2 vote for LeSean. Actually, no, they probably just vote for Cody. I feel like they would vote for Cody. And it's a tie. So I don't know what this tiebreaker would be because in this episode wasn't a tiebreaker. So the tiebreaker is going to be like a talent show. Whatever the tiebreaker is, I'm pretty sure Gret could beat Nick. So I think Nick actually gets eliminated in this episode. And this also breaks Lil, and she's sad by this. Obviously, Nick and her leave on much better terms than they did the original. And so that's another thing to keep note of as well. In episode 6 is the Saki Outdoors, so Kane and Sadie still got lost. And unfortunately in this episode, because of that, the Killer Bass win the challenge. Here, Lil tries to work with Drew as the last 2 in their alliance. Fury has now broken this alliance, and she talks to Lil. And LeSean is still butting heads with Gret. And she talks about Lil and talks about how they gotta work together. And they realize if this keeps carrying on, LeSean, Trent, and Gwen will dominate the game, as they're the strongest group at this point. As Lil realized after Nick's elimination, if this carries on, they will get overpowered. And Lil makes a temporary truce with Fury to work in this episode. As Drew still kind of feels indebted to her, but he's also feels conflicted for voting Lil, as now they're actual friends. So the Gophers lose the challenge here. Jake and Tom would get together. Obviously, Ashley would probably fight the bear in this episode. She'd either fight her, I think she probably would try to fight it and then she'd run away. No, Gabby would try to fight it. Actually, Gabby tries to fight it and she scares the bear. She tells the bear story. Actually, there's no Owen. So I guess that's the case and they just get back sooner. So Katie and Sadie lose. And yeah, everyone just votes for Katie for the same reasons as the original. So sad. So sad. But true. Episode 7, Phobia Factor. Sadie would be devastated for what happened to Katie. And Ezekiel would be there to comfort her. I think Ezekiel and Sadie would get on really well in this episode, as Ezekiel would feel like an outsider. As I think he would just naturally feel an outsider person. Ellie would also get along with Ezekiel and Sadie really well and befriend them with Gabby. Who Gabby would befriend Tom. Now, this is Phobia Factor. So let's go through the first. LeSean fails, Cody fails in the original, Gwen and Trent pass, and Trent forgets Gwen like in the original. Ezekiel, I don't know what his fear would be. First eliminated, he probably would fail. Ashley, Miriam, actually let's go through the process. Tom being found as a spy, he fell. Oh yeah, he's still a spy. He'd want to get evidence against Chris, so that's his whole story. Jake would pass, whatever. I think he could pass. Tom and Jake, actually no, Jake failed his third original. Miriam failed in the original, the cake. Tom passed. Alec failed. Gret would pass. Drew passed. Fiore pass. Lil pass. That's 6 points. Ashley pass. Gabby and Ellie pass. And Sadie pass. So it's down to a tiebreaker again. So these 5. This is 5-5. So these two failed. But because there's 3 points to their 4 points, that would make me think that the Killer Bass lose the challenge. So the Gophers win. So, obviously, the failures were Lashana, Cody, Alec, and Drew. But Fiore doesn't want to get rid of Alec or Drew, so she needs to pick Lashana or Cody, which makes the most logical sense in her mind. I don't know if that was the gist of people failing their phase in this episode, because I'm a bit confused about the actual system in this episode, because Tyler did his feud. Despite the fact he got eliminated, which never makes sense to me. But going through this, I might try to theorize, if that might be a discussion actually, why he got eliminated in that episode too. Anyway, that's a different discussion. So these four would work together, but they don't have Lil on their side. Now, obviously, they would just go with Garrett to these six vote for Lashana. The other four vote for Alec, who'd be probably makes more sense to vote for than Drew. And Drew passed actually, so it made more sense to them to probably vote for Alec than Drew. So I think Lashana goes home here. This would shock the trio, and Lashana would be annoyed, and Gret would say, "Finally, my revenge is complete." In episode 8, Fiore and Alec would still have Gret on their side and realize they don't really need these two right now. But they just need to eliminate one more person in the trio group with Cody, Trent, and Gwen. Because in this point, if they get rid of one of these guys, for example, that will leave them time to get rid of these two. And maybe Gret. So Gwen and Trent obviously still aren't happy. Trent tries to make it up. Fiore separates them and gets Cody to still go with Gwen, like Heather does in the original. In this, Alec and Fiore go on a boat together. Lil goes with Drew, which leaves Trent stuck with Gret in this episode. And honestly, I think Gret would just be complaining to Trent rowing the boat. In the Gophers, it'd be Tom and Jake, Gabby and Ellie, Miriam and Ezekiel. Ezekiel and Sadie, which leaves Ashley and Miriam. Okay, so these two would travel together, and probably would actually get on really well, to be honest. So no Howard here, there's no reason for them to accidentally burn the oars. So everybody makes their... So basically gets across first then, on each boat. Which team would coordinate better? And I probably would think, with Alec and Fiore here, the Killer Bass would win the challenge. So, there's no CRM to chase down Izzy. So, Ezekiel and Sadie are just kind of on the outs. So, these three are dominating the game. I think Ellie's kind of realizing these three are going to win, and they have Ashley. So, they go to Sadie and Ezekiel to try and break a tiebreaker, because they know if they vote with them, next time they go to elimination, they're probably just going to get voted off anyways. So these four vote for Miriam, and these four ask Ellie and Gabby to vote Sadie, who'd probably be the easier one to vote than Ezekiel. But I don't know if Ellie would convince them to vote Ezekiel. Because, I mean, Ezekiel might just be better in challenges. But yeah, I do think they'd get Sadie, and then they realise it's a tie. So Jake would be angry at Ellie for what she did, and there'd be a tiebreaker between Miriam and Sadie. So the tiebreaker is a rowing boat tiebreaker, and the first team to row back wins. I think Sadie would win the challenge because she's younger, and I think she'd be able to be one of the few times where she'd probably be able to win the challenge here. So I think Miriam is actually eliminated. This really upsets Jake, and she hugs Jake and says it was nothing personal, and she wishes him the best of luck. In episode 9 is Paintball Deer Hunter. Obviously, Jake would be annoyed at Ellie throughout this entire episode. And so we have to talk about each person. So we got So we got 4 deer, 3 hunters, 4 deer, 4 hunters. So let's go through who's who. So in this version, we have Tom, Jake, Ellie, and Ashley as deer, with Ezekiel, Gabby, and Sadie as hunters, and Gwen, Alec, Fiore, and Gret as deer, with Cody, Drew, Lil, and Trent as hunters. Now, obviously in this episode, Gwen and Trent aren't running off together. Also, Cody won't get mauled by a bear because there's no reason for that to happen because he's not a deer. Alec would travel with Fiore in this episode, so Ezekiel would probably just replace Owen and also just do really bad here. Drew, I don't think it'd be that well. I feel like Cody and Drew would kind of bond here in this episode. Ashley would be really good, as we saw in Tom. And because Tom wouldn't get distracted, I do think him and Jake probably would have won the challenge here. But Jake and Ellie are just arguing throughout the whole episode, which gives Fiore and Alec a good opportunity to kind of sabotage the other team. I think Ezekiel would shoot. So I think what would happen is Trent would shoot Ellie. I think Ellie and Jake get eliminated together, and Tom tries to break up the fight, but he also gets eliminated by Fiore, Gret, and Alec. Ashley runs by herself and ends up shooting Gwen by herself. I think then Fiore gets taken down, and I think Gret gets taken as well, with Ashley also going, meaning Alec wins the challenge. Jake and Tom would obviously vote for Ellie and Ashley. Gabby would also vote for Jake. And this leaves Ezekiel and Sadie. So this kind of puts them in a tough situation, because Ezekiel and Sadie kind of come in a package deal. They're kind of like best buddies at this point. And the thing is, if they sided with these guys, Gabby would never vote with the other two. And so Ezekiel and Sadie vote for Jake, as he's probably the reason that they lost the challenge. On top of the fact he was a main reason they lost. And so I do think Jake goes home. Jake would wish everyone farewell, and obviously, unlike the original, he wouldn't be injured like Cody, so he'd be fine. In episode 10, Tom would be pretty sad what happened to Jake, as they would just get together. But obviously he wants to get rid of Ellie. So this is the cooking challenge. Now, I forgot to mention here, nobody takes the idol, except we see a flashback of Fiore stealing the idol, as she is aware it's cursed. Meaning, unlike Beth, she has a plan for this. So Alec and Fiore obviously want to try and break these three up in this episode. The cooking challenge, without Miriam here, the Gophers would do much worse. I think the Killer Bass would probably be about the same. Alec's not very good here. And I do think, honestly, with just more people here, and the cursed statue on their team, the Killer Bass is going to lose the challenge. But Fiore is going to sabotage one of these people. And the person she picks is Gwen. Now, you're probably thinking, why Gwen at this point in time? Lil and Drew aren't really a threat. Lil's onto her for Nick's elimination, but she doesn't really want her out yet. Lil and Drew are kind of just a duo. They're not really a threat to her. Gret they need on her side at this point, because if she gets rid of Gret, she doesn't really got any allies. Trent and Gwen are basically a couple, and Cody likes Gwen. And so she has the numbers to eliminate Gwen. So when Gwen reveals the statue, everyone's forced to vote her off, meaning she's eliminated. Trent and Cody are really sad about this, and Gwen also makes up with Trent, and they finally get together. In episode 11 is the episode where Sadie usually goes here. So first of all, we have jump out of the plane. It's Trent and Tom, with Tom just jumping out on like DJ. So Tom gets the point, but obviously he wouldn't push Trent. So Trent does do a bit better. In the next part of the challenge, it's Ashley and Ezekiel, Lil and Drew. And I think, honestly, between the two, Ashley and Ezekiel, probably Lil with his scouts, I think she'd win the challenge for Drew. I think Ashley and Ezekiel just wouldn't do that well. Actually, no, Ezekiel ate rat's cheese in World Tour, so he'd probably win the challenge. And then it's Ellie and Alec as the driver. And then Gabby, Fiore, and then Cody. So Alec would sabotage Ellie, so she'd wipe out. So the Gophers would lose the challenge here. The Gophers wipe out, and they lose the challenge. Ellie or Alec? I think Alec would just do better, yeah. So I think now is where Ezekiel and Sadie would vote with Tom and Ashley, okay? So Tom and Ashley approach Ezekiel and Sadie because they have to get rid of Gabby because Gabby is too much of a challenge threat. Gabby and Tom are friends, but Ellie's thinking the long game. Who do I want to keep around? Who I want to get rid of? And I think she'd think of probably Ashley as the biggest threat, to be honest, because like, she's popular. So I feel like Ashley and Sadie would get on really well. And Ezekiel. And he doesn't want to vote for Ashley. So I feel like what happens here is these four vote for Gabby, leading to Gabby. Ellie was the driver, but Gabby, she would have to like cut the rope. So I feel like they would honestly just vote for Gabby in this episode. So Gabby is eliminated. Ellie is angered about this, but there's nothing she can do, and they all leave. So, in episode 12, we have basics training. So, who goes out first here? And it's Drew and Cody and Fiore. Just not a chance to see through and do that well on Sadie. And Ezekiel. The obstacle course, I think the drawing challenge, I think Trent went here, the original version, so that would still kind of be the same. And then it'd be the next part. I think Ellie would go, and so would Alec. I think, honestly, Lil would win this challenge. I think she absolutely killed this challenge, since she's a scout. She'd be made for this thing, so I think the Killer Boss would win again. So, I think now Ellie goes to Sadie and Ezekiel, because Ashley and Tom are very, very close. And she says to them, I understand why you voted for Gabby, but if you vote me off, you're next. So just be prepared for that. And she wants to keep Tom because Tom's better for challenges. So they all vote for... But Ezekiel refuses to vote for Ashley. So I think what happens here is Ellie and Sadie and Ezekiel have to vote for Tom. So I think Tom would be pretty shocked, but honestly, he would just go. I think that's just kind of the way it works here. I think he just goes. So Ezekiel is the last male on the scene. That's crazy. So episode 13, Extrematurgia. So Ellie and Ashley, Alec and Lil, Drew and Gret, Ellie, Ezekiel, and Sadie, I think Trent, and Gret. Drew and Alec, Cody, Ashley, Ezekiel's Fiore, and Alec, which leaves Ellie and Ashley. And I do think Ellie and Ashley would be Fiore and Alec would win the challenge again. And the girls would probably just gang up to these two. Meaning Ellie's in a bit of trouble because she would try to convince Ezekiel and Sadie, but honestly, it just wouldn't matter at this point. I think she just goes. It's tragic for Ellie, but there's no way for her to be saved. So now we're at the merge, and two people. I forgot guys versus girls. I'll quickly run through this very quickly, but it actually has no bearing to the outcome of this episode. So, in episode 14, I think the guys win because Ezekiel eats rat cheese and the girls just won it that well. But it doesn't really matter because it's a non-elimination round. So, episode 15, we'll talk about who's the who in a sec. So we have the merge, and yeah, I thought it'd be more interesting to bring an OG cast member back as a possible returnee. I know they're returns, but I think it's more interesting and wild in this version because we have more characters, just to kind of bring someone in. So I have 14 people here, and I'm going to use random generator to decide who came back. So 1 is Noah, 2 is Justin, 3 is Beth, 4 is Courtney, 5 is Harold, 6 is Eva, 7 is Bridget, 8 is Lindsay, 9 is DJ, 10 is Izzy, 11 is Jeff, 12 is Duncan, 13th Heather, and 14th Owen. Now, I should have said I did do this off camera because I just thought it would save a bit of time because the generators could take ages for me to pick 2 people, so I'm just going to do that. So in the random number generator, I got Eva and DJ as returnees. I know you could technically say it's cheating, but I just think it's more creative to kind of do a new returnee. So in this, instead of returnees, Chris says there's new contestants who join the merge. Eva would still be how she was, and DJ would basically be the same. Because nobody would know Eva, she doesn't have a target on her back, so she has more of a chance getting into the game. In No Pain No Game, Trent, Fiore, Drew... So, in this, Fiore, Trent, Cody, Drew, Sadie all fail immediately, and Ezekiel does he have a high pain tolerance? I mean, he got thrown out of a plane. DJ would fail. Ashley and Alec have high pain tolerance. Lil would fail. Gret fails. Which leaves Alec, Eva, Ashley, and Ezekiel. Alec would throw the challenge, knowing at this point in time, winning a challenge this early on would make him a target. So he throws the challenge. Leaving Ezekiel and Eva as the final, Ashley as well, the final 3. Ezekiel fails, Ashley would fail, and Eva wins the challenge, since she was going to win in the original, and without Lashawna here, there's no reason for her not to win. So, Fiore and Alec and Gret would have a group. Cody would have himself and Trent. I guess DJ, he's still kind of here. Eva wins the challenge, so Ezekiel, Sadie, and Ashley are a trio. Trent and Cody are in a duo. And Lil is in a duo. So, Fiore goes to Eva and DJ and makes a truce. Okay? She says to them, listen, you win the challenge, but you need someone to protect you, Eva. Join my alliance, and we can get rid of the weaker competition. So I think Alec is very similar to Noah, and they got on really well, so I do think Eva and Alec would have got on pretty well. DJ wouldn't like this, though, because he wouldn't like to sabotage other people. But Alec points out simply it's him to get further into the game, and he's not sabotaging people. It's only a part of the game voting people. It's nothing personal. And of course DJ is able to be convinced, reluctantly. But Alec and Fiora keep this in mind, as they need to let for him soon. So, with 3, 2, and 2 in the group, and them making sure they don't tell anyone, these 3 vote Fiore. I think these 2 also, Cody and Trent, would vote for Gret. Lil and Drew vote Alec. And these 5 vote Ashley, who did the best in the challenge. So I think everyone agrees that Ashley has to go here, and so she's eliminated. She's pretty happy she made it this far, and wishes everyone the best of luck. I also would mention that Ashley and Lil would join an alliance this episode, as they would now be friends. Meaning, automatically, she'd have 5 people. And Fiore would convince Trent and Cody to vote for Ashley, with the other 5 voting for Fiore. As they would explain the situation that if they don't, they'll just go next. And they need to break up this 5-person group. And I think Trent would agree, reluctantly working with Fiore. And so Ashley remains eliminated. In episode 16 is the hide and seek challenge, and this is where they have to hide or get across to the finish line, or if they call somebody out, they win. So Eva would win for just racing to the end. DJ would hide on the roof, with now Ezekiel in this episode, with Lil and Drew obviously hiding together. Sadie and Ezekiel would hide together, and Trent would also hide with DJ. So DJ would get called out by Fiore, who would also win immunity. Ezekiel and Sadie would hide together, sharing a romantic moment, but then it would be broken up by Cody, accidentally. Everybody else gets caught, and I think, honestly, Eva and Fiore win the challenge. So, DJ would be annoyed at Fiore for calling him out. Gret's on their side, but there's still, Eva's on their side. There's still a 4-person group. So, Trent and Cody would vote, these 4 vote Fiore. They can't vote Fiore because she's immune. So DJ has to work with them. But Lil gets Drew and Ezekiel and Sadie to vote Alec. I think DJ, he vote Alec. And then to get back at them, they would still convince Trent and Cody, but because there's no reason for them to vote for DJ, they would just vote for Lil, who'd be the leader of the group. As they could get Drew and get DJ out next time of elimination. So Lil remains eliminated. Obviously, there's no Heather to kiss Trent, so he wouldn't go home. So I don't really see any reason why he would leave. In episode 17, we have the one where Bridget goes here. This is the Keys challenge, where Heather randomly gets immunity, and because Fiora is closest to the villain, she would win immunity. So I'm going to say Fiora wins. And again, Drew would probably side with Fiore. And so would Gret. But they don't really need Eva right now, because she's won the most challenges. And I think this is where Fiore, Alec, Gret, and Drew would vote for Eva. And so would everybody else. So Eva's eliminated. This would annoy Eva, and she would get enraged. But she wouldn't be as annoyed at everyone in the original, because she'd be a lot more chill about it than the original, because she would understand that she was a threat. In episode 18 is the bike race. And so in this episode, everyone qualifies. So who does not qualify? Ezekiel and Sadie crashes out, and True. Cody crashes out as well as Fiore. Meaning DJ, Trent, Alec, and Gret are the last 4 to qualify. Trent's the only one I can see crossing the finish line, though, because he's really good at making bikes, which leaves DJ, Alec, and Gret. DJ would wipe out, as he did in the first round. I forgot to mention he wipes on the first round. So between Alec and Gret, I do think Alec would win. So I think due to the really unfortunate ruling in this episode, I think Gret remains eliminated, which would annoy Gret as a result. So in episode 19, Hookline Screamer. I think in this episode, DJ gets caught like he does and gets the worst death. So it doesn't really matter who I say would lose. But honestly, for the winners, I do think it's Ezekiel, and Trent and Cody would encounter the fake Psycho Killer. So in episode 20 is the Animal Buddies Challenge. So who would win the Animal Buddies Challenge? Not Fury, not Alec. Trent, maybe. I feel like Ezekiel would win the challenge here. The episode Ezekiel would just bomb at the farm animals and would win the challenge. So there's nobody crazy here. And so I think Trent Cody would kind of agree that they need to get rid of Alec or Fury. Now, I think at this point in time, they can convince Drew to vote with them, but they're unable to convince the other four. And so everyone gangs up on Fury, who won the most challenges. And so she's eliminated. Now, I think she would be annoyed here for getting voted off. But Alec and Fury don't have as much tension between each other because she didn't screw him over. Now, a lot of people say Alec's a bit better physically, but Fury has won a lot of the challenges. So I think they would just all vote for Alec, who'd be a bigger threat at this point. So he's eliminated. Fury would be sad that he's gone, but honestly she wouldn't be as annoyed as she would be. They'd actually leave in peaceful terms, and kind of how they did in All Stars would give each other a fist bump, respecting each other as a result. In the pairs challenge, it would be Drew and Trent, and it would be Cody and Fury, Ezekiel and Trent, Sadie and Drew. Now, obviously in this episode, Fury would convince Cody to try and flip on one of these two. So she'd have to try and win immunity. Ezekiel and Trent win the first part of the challenge. Trent doesn't do very well at eating. Ezekiel does. Fury would, and Cody probably wouldn't do that well, so I do think Sadie and Drew win here. Putting the statue back in Boney Island would now be Ezekiel and Trent. In the initial order would obviously be Cody and Fury. Because everyone's won 1 point, there's no immunity this episode. So I think here there's duos, and Drew would be with Fury. And she'd look at the people on who's left, and who would be the biggest threats that are left. And Ezekiel and Sadie, and they think it's a popularity contest at this point, so they'd all just vote for Sadie or Trent. And I think Trent's a more popular person than Sadie. So I think everyone votes for Trent here. So Trent wishes everyone the best of luck and hopes that Fury goes here. Now, the obvious candidate would be Fury, but I don't think so. It's Sadie. Yeah, it's Sadie. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. Alec would say Sadie. I feel like, Katie would miss Sadie, and Alec could just manipulate the situation into where everyone just makes sure that they do not get rid of Fury. So I think that's what happens. Ezekiel makes Mr. Coconut in this episode, but everything else stays the same. So Fury, obviously, they're all fighting. Mr. Coconut goes. So sad. Episode 24, Are We There Yetis? So it's not guys, this is girls. 4, Are We There Yetis? So it's not guys, this is girls. Okay. So, in this episode, it's not guys versus girls. So, I honestly think it would be Fury and Drew against Cody and Ezekiel. So it's Gophers against Killer Bass. And Fury would sabotage Ezekiel and Cody because they would do so terrible in this challenge. I honestly do not think they would be able to win. So, unfortunately, because of this, they go to elimination and Chef chooses who to eliminate. Now, Cody and Ezekiel, which one would do worse? I know how you always say that deleted scene in World Tour, but I kind of think Ezekiel might stay. I don't know. I mean, Ezekiel and Chef do not like Ezekiel later on, but this is season 1 Ezekiel. I'm gonna have to say Ezekiel. It sucks, but I honestly think that Chef would choose Ezekiel. But then again, I don't think Ezekiel would just leave first. Like, I do think Cody wouldn't have been done as well. Like, without Gwen there, I do honestly think Chef would eliminate Cody. So he would go home. Cody would be devastated about this, but I honestly think that's kind of that. So, I don't know, Chef would just kind of... Drew would just kind of slow Fiore down, I feel like, in this challenge. And Ezekiel and Cody would work really well together, so I think Chef would choose to get rid of Cody, since Ezekiel did better in the eating challenge. On top of the fact, I feel like Ezekiel did a little bit better than Cody, and so that's kind of the reason I think he would choose to get rid of Cody here. But if you think Cody should have stayed, that's fine. So in episode 25, Triple Dog Dare You, Fiore would absolutely kill this challenge because it's fears. She wouldn't really... There's nothing that would fear her. Ezekiel is very much on the same level because I think he would be level like Fiore. The only person who I think would struggle here is Drew. As like Cody, he doesn't seem to have very big endurance. But between Fiore and Drew, I do think Fiore would manipulate Drew and get into his head about how he's going to do terrible here. He's going to not win. And honestly, I think Fiore would get a bunch of freebies, and she'd backstab Drew. And so I think she would side with Ezekiel, and she'd ask Ezekiel, hey, give me a bunch of freebies. And Ezekiel doesn't really understand what is happening. And so I feel like she manipulates Ezekiel, and Drew goes home. He is shocked, and Drew hopes Fiore fails in this episode. So we're in the finale, and everyone except Ellie, Gabby, Ellie, Alec would all support Fiore. And they each get winning endings, and I'm gonna be honest, the winner of the season has to be Ezekiel. Okay? He's had the ultimate redemption story. Ezekiel has had his friendship with Sadie, and I think they get together in the finale, which would be nice. I think them two getting together and him befriending Katie would be nice, okay? And his redemption story. Fiore's played an amazing game this season, but I still feel like Ezekiel is going to win out the two. He is the lesser of the two evils. So Ezekiel's not necessarily evil, but Chris would then explain to Ezekiel whether or not he wants to give up the prize money. I think he possibly would, but I don't think so. I don't think he would give up the prize money. So this is where the timeline ends. Thank you guys for watching. This is the Emotional Wrestling Summit Gone. And let me know if you enjoyed this, if you want a part 2. And if not, I'll leave it in this timeline. But I actually really like this suggestion. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, peace and farewell.